So there are 7,000 different languages spoken on this earth. And of those 7,000 languages, 90% are spoken between 100,000 people or less. But luckily, there is a universal language of the world, which is science. I mean, all of us, regardless of race, religion, etc., are all made up of the same genes. We only differ in our alleles, which are our alternate forms of our genes. And this is the ultimate power and the ultimate key to unlocking the mysteries of the world. And so, if knowledge is power and science is knowledge, then science is power. And this needs to be utilized in the correct ways if we want to make the proper decisions carrying forth the world. For example, the great innovations of people who were born without legs, prosthetic engineering, and now they can become Paralympic world athletes. So this is when power is invested in the right hands. But when power is invested in the wrong hands, you have catastrophes. The 1945 atomic bombing, killing thousands of innocent people. So how do we make sense that this power is invested in the right ways? Well, I think science is most properly propagated in the form of academic papers, but unfortunately, if you can read the title of this, it's in English, but it does not look like English to me, even as a biology major. Actually, my reaction to this paper is summed up perfectly in Bill Cosby's expression on the next slide, like, what the heck? Even the academia who I learn from on a daily basis have trouble decoding these papers and decoding the scientific innovations that happen on a daily basis. So how are we as normal citizens supposed to vote for decision makers on these issues? And I think this problem stems from a very young age, when in elementary school we're taught science as one of many disciplines, when in reality we're not taught how science is complexly related to art, to reading, etc. So I thought that by going into a scientific major, into a scientific career path, I would have many different paths to go down, which is true, and it took a little time to uncover this, because as an 18-year-old coming into college, it seemed as though all of my 18-year-old peers knew that they wanted to be a doctor if they were interested in science. And they had a great 8-year plan that was going to make them $150,000 at the end of the road, and they were set. But it just wasn't for me. And then if they weren't going to be a doctor, maybe they were going to get their PhD in biology and chemistry, and publish these academic papers that no one seems to really understand, but still contribute to society in a positive light. But once again, this just wasn't for me. So here I was, a person interested in science, confused, an orange among the apples of the basket of scientific fruit, if you will. And I was really questioning whether science was truly for me. But deep down, I knew at the bottom of my heart that I wanted my scientific degree to take me somewhere where I could make decisions, to take me to Capitol Hill one day, maybe. And this isn't really a traditional viewpoint of what a science major is, but I hope that throughout this presentation I can show you that there's more to science than just white lab coats. Because after all, there's no experiments if there's no money. And there's no money if there's no funding for that money to be given out. And that money is distributed by policies, and we have our politicians fighting over those policies, distributing the money. And don't we want our money distributed in the proper way? I mean, if we can't even understand those papers as biology students, how are these econ degrees running Capitol Hill supposed to? So this is a major issue that I've thought about for a long time, but even though it's kind of scary, I have hope because we're all human and we have that universal language. And we all understand moments like these, moments when our grandmothers get into remission after years and years of battling with cancer. And I think this is the moments that are really propagated in the media, which is great, but unfortunately, science is not always glamorous. Science is sometimes the nitty-gritty of the paperwork, of filing those grant proposals. It's not always using microscopes and white lab coats and discovering these new DNA daily. So we have to constantly remind ourselves and remind our decision makers that science needs to be educated in so much more than science majors. We need our politicians understanding these issues. So I want to challenge all of you guys out there, all of you scientists, to get yourself out of your OChem books and into a civic town hall meeting to learn how people really interact. And I want to challenge all of you law students to get out of your law classes and into a white lab coat and use a microscope and see how the cure to cancer is really found. Benjamin Franklin once said that there's nothing more true in life than death and taxes, but in my opinion, there's nothing more real in life than science and the law, and they're a lot more intimately connected than most of us realize. So thank you.